The scent of a hospital room is a specific kind of cruelty. It smells of bleached linen and failed hope, a chemical mask over the raw reality of pain. I sat propped against the pillows, my body feeling like it had been zipped open and poorly glued back together. 3 days ago, they had pulled Emma and Grace from my womb. 3 days ago, I was a wife and a mother. Then the door swung open. Daniel didn't enter like a husband visiting a healing wife. He entered like a CEO walking into a hostile takeover. His suit was charcoal, bespoke, and sharp enough to draw blood. Behind him stood Lindsay Parker, the woman who had spent the last 2 years organizing his life. She looked polished, her blonde hair catching the sterile overhead lights, her hand resting just for a fleeting second on the small of Daniel's back. He didn't look at the 2 bassinets by the window. He didn't look at the 2 tiny souls, Emma and Grace, who were the only reason my heart was still beating. He looked at the plastic tray table over my lap. Whack! The sound of a heavy manila envelope hitting the tray echoed in the silent room. "Take $3 million and sign it," Daniel said. His voice was a flat, horizontal line. "I've already moved my things into the penthouse. The house is yours to sell or keep. I don't care. But I want the kids. Full custody and supervised. Final." The room tilted. I looked at the envelope, then at him. "Daniel, I just had major surgery. Our daughters are 72 hours old, which is why you aren't thinking clearly," he countered, leaning down until his face was inches from mine. "You're fragile, Carolyn. You're emotional. Mitchell Construction is about to go public. I can't have the unstable wife narrative dragging down the IPO. Lindsay is going to help me raise them. We have a nanny. We have a plan. You have. Well, you have $3 million and a surgical scar. Take the deal." I looked at Lindsay. She had the grace to look at the floor, but she didn't leave. "You're serious," I whispered. "You think you can buy my children?" "I'm buying your silence and a clean break," Daniel said, sliding a silver fountain pen across the table. "Sign the temporary custody agreement and the divorce petition. If you fight me, I'll use every resource I have to prove you're medically and mentally unfit. I've already spoken to the head of the hospital. Don't make this ugly." In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It froze. I realized that for 10 years, I hadn't been his partner. I had been his chief operating officer of domestic affairs. I had built his company's backend. I had scrubbed his spreadsheets. I knew the man. And the man only understood leverage. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed the papers. Daniel's eyes flashed with a mix of relief and predatory satisfaction. He grabbed the papers, didn't offer a goodbye or a get well, and walked out. Lindsay followed him, her heels clicking a sharp, victorious rhythm on the linoleum. The door clicked shut. I sat there for 5 minutes, the silence of the room pressing against my eardrums. Then I reached for my phone. "Janet," I said when she answered, "bring the truck. Park in the loading zone near the laundry exit. I'm 10 years ago." Mitchell Construction was 2 men and rusted out. Ford F-150, Daniel was the charm. I was the engine. While he shook hands with developers, I was in our studio apartment until 3 a.m., learning tax law, negotiating with steel suppliers, and creating a filing system that tracked every single nail and hour of labor. Daniel thought I was just keeping the books. He didn't realize I was building a map. The escape from the hospital was a blur of white-hot pain and adrenaline. Janet, a retired nurse who feared nothing, helped me shuffle down the service hallway. I had the twins strapped into their carriers, my abdomen screaming with every step. "You're crazy," Janet whispered as we reached her truck. "You're going to bust your stitches. Then sew me back up when we get to Lincoln." I gasped, clutching the door handle. He thinks I'm a broken woman. He's forgotten who taught him how to read a balance sheet. We drove through the Nebraska night, the flat horizon stretching out like a dark promise. When we arrived at Janet's small, ivy-covered house in Lincoln, the world felt different. The air was colder, sharper. I spent the first 48 hours in a fog of pain and nursing. But on the third night, while the twins slept in the borrowed bassinet, I opened my old laptop. Daniel had cut off my access to the main server months ago, a move I had expected. What he didn't know was that I had installed a mirror drive back-in 2021 when he first started working late with Lindsay. Every invoice, every kickback to the city inspectors, every offshore account he'd opened to optimize the IPO, it was all there. I spent the night looking at a folder labeled Project Verdant. It was a residential development in West Omaha. Daniel had told the board it was a $50 million win. The spreadsheets showed something else. He had used subpar concrete and forged the safety certifications. He was sitting on a ticking time bomb of structural failure, all to make the company look more profitable for the IPO. He wanted the kids because they were the perfect family. Man optics for a CEO. He didn't want them. He wanted the image of them. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. The hospital says you vanished. You have 12 hours to return the girls to the condo, or I call the police for kidnapping. Don't be a martyr, Carolyn. It doesn't suit you. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent an encrypted file to a man named Elias Thorne, the shark and the shadow. Elias Thorne was the kind of lawyer people hired when they wanted to burn a kingdom down. He didn't work in a glass office. He worked out of a renovated warehouse in the Haymarket district. When I walked into his office 2 days later, still pale and moving slowly, he didn't offer me tea. He looked at the file I'd sent him. This is enough to put Daniel Mitchell in federal prison for 15 years, Thorne said, his voice like gravel. Wire fraud, racketeering, and endangering public safety with that West Omaha project. Why haven't you gone to the FBI? Because he has my daughter's names on a custody agreement. I signed under duress. I said, I don't want him in prison. Not yet. I want him to understand that he didn't just divorce a wife. He fired his only protection. Thorne leaned back, a predatory smile touching his lips. You want to play the long game. The IPO is in 20 days. Exactly, I said. On the day Daniel Mitchell thinks he's becoming a billionaire, I want him to realize he's actually broke. But Daniel was already moving. That afternoon, the news broke. I watched the local Omaha station from Janet's couch. Daniel was standing in front of his construction site, looking haggard and worried. I just want my girls home, he told the cameras, his voice cracking perfectly. Carolyn is a wonderful woman, but postpartum psychosis is a terrifying thing. I'm asking the public, if you see her, call the authorities. She needs help. My daughters need their father. The missing mother headline flashed across the screen. My face, a photo from a gala 3 years ago where I looked tired and overwhelmed, was plastered next to his. He's good, Janet said, handing me a bottle for grace. He's making you the villain in the light of day. Let him, I said, my heart pounding. The darker the shadow he casts, the less he'll see me coming. The deposition of truth. The summons arrived at Janet's house 48 hours later. Daniel's lawyers had tracked my cell phone pings. They didn't send the police. They sent a process server with an emergency hearing notice. The hearing was held in a private conference room. Daniel sat at the head of the table, Lindsay sitting directly behind him in the advisor chair. He looked at me with a mix of pity and triumph. Carolyn, he said softly, just give them up. You look terrible. You're staying in a house that isn't yours. Let's end this. My lawyer, Thorne, opened his briefcase. He didn't pull out custody papers. He pulled out a single, grainy photograph of a concrete pour at the West Omaha site. Daniel's face didn't change, but his pupils dilated. Mr. Mitchell, Thorne began, we aren't here to discuss the children yet. We're here to discuss the Verdant project, and specifically, the $12 million that seems to have migrated from the safety budget into a private account in the Cayman Islands under the name L. Parker. The silence in the room became a physical weight. Lindsay froze. Daniel's hand, resting on the table, began to twitch. "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel said, though his voice had lost its resonance. "I think you do," I said, speaking for the first time. I leaned forward, the pain in my incision finally starting to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. "I built the system you used to hide that money, Daniel. Did you really think I wouldn't leave a backdoor? I know about the forged signatures. I know Lindsay wasn't just your assistant. She was your fall girl. If this goes to the SEC, she's the one who signed the fraudulent certifications." Lindsay turned to look at Daniel. The perfect posture was gone. "Daniel?" she whispered. Daniel didn't look at her. He was staring at me. For the first time in 10 years, he was actually seeing me. Not as the woman who made his coffee or the woman who birthed his twins, but as the architect of his empire. "What do you want?" he hissed. "I want the $3 million you offered me," I said. "But I want it to be a down payment. I want 51% of Mitchell Construction. I want full custody. No visitation until you've completed a year of supervised therapy. And I want you to go on that same news station and tell them that you lied. Tell them I'm the most stable person you've ever met. You'll destroy the company," he snarled. "The IPO will fail. The company is already destroyed, Daniel. You just haven't smelled the smoke yet," I replied. "Sign the transfer of shares, or Thorne hit send on a curated email to the SEC and the Omaha World Herald. You have 10 minutes. The fall of a king." Daniel Mitchell was a man who believed that power was taken. He never understood that true power is grown, rooted in the details, nurtured in the midnight hours of hard work. He signed. He had no choice. To a man like Daniel, losing his money was worse than losing his children. He thought he could rebuild. He thought he could find a new Carolyn to do the heavy lifting. The following week, the missing mother story vanished. Daniel issued a brief, humiliating statement about misunderstandings and private family healing. But I wasn't done. I took the 51% stake, and my first act as chairwoman was to halt the IPO. The board was in an uproar. But I walked into that boardroom with the evidence of the Verdant project. I told them we were going to spend the next year tearing down and rebuilding every faulty structure Daniel had touched. We were going to be honest. We were going to be safe. The stock didn't soar. It plummeted. And Daniel, whose personal wealth was tied to the valuation of those shares, watched his fortune evaporate. Lindsay left him 48 hours after she realized he was his legal shield. She didn't have the stomach for the lawsuits that followed. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of a new house, not a mansion, but a sturdy, sun-drenched home on the outskirts of Lincoln. Emma and Grace were on a blanket in the grass, their giggles the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. My phone chimed. It was an alert. Mitchell Construction, now renamed Legacy Builders, had just been awarded the contract for the new Children's Hospital. We were profitable again. We were clean. A car pulled up at the end of the driveway. A silver sedan, a far cry from the Lamborghinis Daniel used to favor. He stepped out. He looked older. The sharp edge of his suit was gone, replaced by a weary, everyday look. He walked to the edge of the porch. He didn't come up. "They look big," he said, nodding toward the girls. "They are," I said. "They're crawling now." "Carolyn," he started, his voice hesitant. I underestimated you." "No, Daniel," I said, standing up and feeling the strength in my core. The scar on my abdomen now just a thin, silver line of history. "You didn't underestimate me. You just never bothered to estimate me at all. To you, I was part of the furniture. And you forgot that if you kick the foundation hard enough, the whole house comes down." He stood there for a long time. A man who had wanted the world and ended up with nothing but a cashier's check for the few shares he had left. "Can I see them?" he asked. I looked at my daughters. Then I looked at the man who had walked into a hospital room with divorce papers while I was still bleeding. The court-ordered supervisor will be here on Saturday at 10 a.m. I said firmly, "You can have 1 hour. Don't be late." As he drove away, I picked up Grace and Emma. I walked into my house, the house I had built, the life I had saved. Daniel Mitchell had tried to buy my life for $3 million. He didn't realize that a mother's love doesn't have a price tag, but a woman's intelligence has a very high interest rate. I closed the door, and for the first time in a decade, the air smelled perfectly, beautifully fresh.